Hello, everybody. As people join the room, welcome. This is our first mentoring session for Life After Death, and we're honored that you're here. Thank you for joining us this morning, this afternoon, wherever you may be. And of course, my name is Noah. I'm here to receive your questions and pass them off to our lovely guests today. So you may be able to see, or you will see shortly, we have Saje and Serena here with us, and they are eager to answer your questions. So welcome, Saje and Serena.
Hi.
Thank you. Yeah, hi. We're happy to be here.
Yes, we are. So again, we have 60 minutes here together now, 59. So please write your questions into chat and write them there quickly, because we may not be able to get to every question. But write your question into chat. Keep it concise if you can. If you are feeling so compelled or lucky, you can raise your hand. Just go on the bottom, there's a reactions button, and you can click on that to raise your hand, and we may bring on a couple of guests who have a hand raised. So let's just, I'm just feeling bold here. We have Amy with a raised hand, and maybe let's just bring her on just to get the conversation started here. It could take about a minute or two, not quite that much. But here is Amy with us, and we're going to ask you to unmute, Amy. And do you have a brief question to share with Saje and Serena?
Sure. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So thank you for this session. I'm so grateful for it. And I've listened to the talks and Wayne Dyer over the years, and I wish I could have met him. But I just want to mention a couple of coincidences, just a brief coincidence, that when I was listening to your talk about seat 2B and to be or not to be, I happened to be sitting in seat 2B. So that was really quite a coincidence.
Oh, that's amazing.
I know. And a few years ago, I was visiting Machu Picchu and I couldn't sleep at night. And I was listening to one of Wayne Dyer's talks or books. It was an audiobook or a talk. And he happened to be talking about Machu Picchu exactly during that half an hour conversation that time. And I think the family had visited Machu Picchu, or one of you had visited with him at Machu Picchu. So that was quite a coincidence also.
Wow. Yes, we went there together. Saje and I, our mom and dad, and our brother and sister, Sands and Summer. We went there, I want to say in the year 2000, and it was incredible. And we went there for American Thanksgiving holiday. And it was a really magical trip, a really wonderful experience. And it was just, actually a funny thing happened on that trip that I'll just share with you guys briefly. At the time, the medium psychic that was just sort of starting to become known, Sylvia Brown, she had been with us on that trip for part of it, and she had warned one of the guides that if he ever hiked up the mountain at Machu Picchu again, he would die. And he kind of blew her off. And then the next time he went there, he did the hike and he died the moment he came off of that hike. And so I guess the reason I bring this up is just to say that I think that intuition and having a knowing and having that inner voice for some people is really strong. And she obviously was right. And not that I think that we should always heed the advice of others, but it's just fascinating to me how some people, like Karen, who is part of this program, as you know, with us, just have this gift of being able to hear so clearly messages from the other side.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
So
and I think
sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. What's your question?
So quick question about connecting with my dad, who transitioned around 2.5 years ago. He transitioned, pretty much, I think he had decided to stop eating and drinking. He believed a lot in Buddhism. And I think he had reached the helm of his career and he had done everything in life. And he thought that it was a good time for him to transition. And he pretty much, didn't want to have any intervention. And I spent the last month and a half with him. It was early on during COVID. And I did a lot for him. And I was so grateful to have spent that time with him. Now, with the connection, I live in the US and my dad, that time I was visiting India. And we have a special park in Seattle, which we visit every time. So every time I go there, I think of him. And just recently, I've thought of him a lot. He loved bald eagles. And this time, there have been so many times where I've thought of him and I've seen bald eagles circling around, or if I take a call near the water, a bald eagle.
Amy, sorry to interrupt, but can you get to your question, please? We have many people asking
so how
questions.
do you know whether that's a connection, or whether or is it a sign or a connection, or is it just they just happen to be around?
Yeah,
I would say, what does it feel like to you? Because we'll never ultimately know, right? I mean, we could make we could give a logical reason for why it is or why it is not. But if you feel your father in those moments and you have that connection with him to bald eagles and you're thinking of him and you see them, I would say that's pretty convincing. But I think it depends on how that feels to you. Does it feel to you as though that is a message from him and him just saying hello? And so that would be how I would answer that, would be that there's no way that we would actually know. Sage and I aren't, experts on the subject of signs, but in my belief, it would be absolutely that's a wink from your dad.
Yeah. And I would say that our loved ones are always trying to send us signs, and it's a matter of when we are capable of tuning in, when we are energetically aligned with those synchronicities that are taking place. But are we in the right headspace, mind space to notice them, and be in that synchronistic place where you can see them? And it sounds like for you, you're seeing these bald eagles, you're thinking of your dad. Then yeah, I would say you're in that space and your dad is letting you know that he's there with you.
Awesome. Thank you, Sage and Serena. And thank you, Amy, for the question here. We have so many questions in chat. So we have from Tamara is asking, I have a question regarding the story, talking to my bumps. Do you think it would work if an adult did the same thing? Perhaps it would work so well for Sage because she was a child. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, I talked about that a lot in that. When I tell that story, I talk about this because I do think that it can work for an adult. Actually, I know that it can. But for me, having had that experience as a child, when I was so much more open to this idea that it would work, because I was, I think, 8 years old and my parents were telling me that it would work, and the doctor too. And that was enough of a reason for me to believe that this was like an equally valid option as taking a medication or, lasering off. I had warts, for anyone who hasn't read that part of or listened to that part of the modules yet. But anyway, so yeah, I think that because I was a child, it allowed me to be more open to it. And I had that experience. So now as an adult, I can know that it works, and it would work for me again. But I think the key as an adult is just getting to that place of knowing that it can work and having no doubt and no fear, and just surrounding the experience with love instead of fear, and getting your doubt out of the way, getting your ego out of the way, and diving into it that way, which I believe was easier as a child, but definitely doable as an adult.
Thank you, Sage. Thank you. We have a question from Susan is asking, Susan says, I understand that I have to be in a higher vibration to hear a loved one from the other side, but can I also hear when I'm in distress?
I mean, my belief is that yes, is that they're always trying to reach out to us and that they're always trying to send us signs and messages, particularly when we are in a difficult time. So I believe that yes, they can get through to you and let you know that they are there with you during a difficult time. And I think for those, I don't know if any of you have finished the entire program at this point, but I can tell you that at the end, there will be an example that I give of probably the day I was the most afraid of in my life, where I was getting ready to drop my husband off at prison, for those of you that have heard the end of the story. And I won't give away too much, but I'll just say that I was in extreme distress and stress and fear. And we got a sign that is so incredibly real and poignant and accurate in the moment that we got the miracle that we had been waiting for, that there's no doubt in my mind that that was a sign that we were still with the loved one that we had lost. So I won't give it all away, because if you haven't heard it yet, but it was a sign on a day of extreme stress. And it was a sign that came in the moment that a miracle came. And it was clear as day. So my experience is yes. But I do think that sometimes when we're in grief, it's not that if you're in grief, you're not going to get the sign. It's that sometimes when you're in grief, your focus, your attention, your awareness is on what's missing, which would be who you're missing, or it could be the relationship that you're missing, or the job that you're missing. But when you're in a state of grief or fear or anxiety, it seems as though it's more often than not the case that our awareness is not even connecting to the realm of spirit and the realm of miracles and the realm of what is possible. Instead, a lot of times we're focused on what we lost or what we're missing. And therefore, I think signs can be missed or just not seen or heard or felt, but they're still there.
Thank you, Serena. And thank you for the question. I think that was somebody. Sorry. Thank you for the question. We have a question from Cindy. Cindy is saying, good morning from Cape Coral, Florida. Cindy's asking, how do you ask your dad for advice? And she's saying her husband passed away in February and she gets visits from him all the time, but she would like to open a two-way dialogue to ask him about certain things that she needs advice for. So how do you ask your dad for advice?
I would say that you should speak out loud to him when you can. I think that, there's this notion that our loved ones, once they've passed on, are in our heads and can hear our thoughts, but I don't know if that's always true. I think that our minds are our unique minds, and I don't know who has access to them or how all of that works. But when I feel like I really want to connect with one of my loved ones who has already crossed over to the other side, I make a point to speak out loud to them when I'm alone. And at first it feels funny, but sometimes it even helps to hold your phone up to your ear and just act like you're talking to them in the room. And then just get still and quiet, ask your questions and get still and quiet your mind and see if you feel a sense of what they are giving back to you. I think at first something like, 8 years ago, if you told me this, I would have been like, that sounds crazy. And you're talking to voices in your head. But now I've just, I know that our loved ones are communicating with us, can give us senses of what's right and wrong. We all have had that feeling of our intuition speaking to us and giving you that feeling of what the right answer is, or if you're doing something that doesn't feel right, that pit in your stomach. And I think our loved ones can communicate with us in that way through energies, feelings, frequencies. So ask your questions and then get quiet and see if you get specific answers or gut feelings about, what it is you're seeking advice on.
Yeah, I have a story that I could share about that, about how the universe responds in divine timing, not human timing. But I don't know if we should just continue with the questions or
go for it, Serena. Please.
Okay, so briefly, because I just think this is something that changed my life, this experience that I had, and maybe this also will help with that question that you had. When we were in Lourdes, France, Sage and my dad and Sans and I and a bunch of people that had flown to Europe, and we were going to all these holy sites in Europe with our dad, where he was going to be speaking at different venues. And so first we went to Assisi, where St. Francis had lived, and we listened to him give this talk on St. Francis's life. And after that talk, I had decided that I was going to make, for the next week that we were going to be in Lourdes, France, where St. Bernadette lived, I had decided that I was going to make the prayer of St. Francis my mantra. Essentially, I was going to repeat it as I was falling asleep. I was going to repeat it when my mind started to wander throughout the day. And I was just going to constantly say in my dialogue, in my mind, dear God, please make me an instrument of thy peace, of thy love. Let me bring love. Let me bring peace. Let me bring joy to anyone that is suffering. And I was, it was a varied version of the prayer, but I just shortened it to just use me. Let me be an instrument of your work. And I think I was doing this kind of as a way to see what would happen if I really, really said this in my mind for a week, if anything cool would really come about or something. but also because I felt those words were so beautiful. And as our dad used to say, that prayer of St. Francis is not a prayer, it's a technology. So I decided I was just going to adopt that technology. So long story short, we're in Lourdes, France, and there's this experience that people go there for. It's the main experience people go to Lourdes for, and it is to be dipped in the holy water that that has been known to cure people and to provide miracles of healing for injured or sick for years. I don't know, hundreds of years at this point. But when Sage and Sans and I were there, we were, I was like probably 23, 24 years old. And we weren't so, into the idea of taking off our clothes in front of a bunch of nuns and getting dipped in these freezing cold waters. So we had never signed up to do it. It wasn't until the last day we were there and 3 people in a row kind of said, you really have to go do this. You have to go do this. You cannot miss this. So Sage and I were like, all right, so we go to get in the line, and the line is completely closed. They're not allowing anybody else in because they had too many people waiting and the nuns needed to go home by 5 o'clock. So as we're waiting in this line, we accept that we're not going to get in. Of course, the men's line for our brother, he just walked right in. There was nobody waiting. But Sage and I were like, that's fine. We're not going to get in, but it's okay. So as we're standing there, a lady from our group who was in the line was saying to us through the fence, have you guys done this? Oh, this is my 3rd time since we've been here. Just come take my spots. And we were like, okay, we'd love to, but I don't know if, they'll just let us switch with you. She went over to the head guy, the head priest in charge, and said, please, there's these 2 girls here. They're from America. They can take my spot. And he was like, no, I can't. I'm sorry. I can't let anybody else in. So we're just watching and we're like, it's all right. Don't worry about it. Like, saying to her through the fence. And as she's saying that, the priest looks at her and then looks at us, but really he looks right at me in particular. And he says, her, that's who you want to let in? And she said, yes, her and her sister. And he said, I will let them in. And he motioned for us to come over, and he looks right at me and he says, I will let you in because I know what you did. I saw you. And I was thinking like, oh my God, like he knows I'm like the biggest sinner here. I was like all of a sudden feeling like I was going to throw up. I was so nervous. And he said, I saw you yesterday when you helped that old lady in the cafe. And he said, and he said something like, and it was beautiful. And so you and your sister can come in and you can cut the line. You can go right to the front. And I started sobbing because all I had done yesterday was see a woman in a cafe who had a walker, like a device to help her walk. And as she stood up, it fell over. And I just watched for a second and I didn't see anybody go over to assist her. So because I'm saying in my mind, how may I serve? How may I serve? I crossed the street, picked up the walker, set it upright, helped her stand up. And I just said, God bless you. And she said, thank you, thank you. And that was it. That was all I had done, was just help somebody in a moment of need. And because of that, we got to go to the front of this line, get dipped in these holy waters. And all I could do in that moment, when I was getting dipped in the water, was cry a prayer of thank you, of how may I serve? Let this become the mantra of my life. And so I believe that sometimes the answer that we get from the universe is not necessarily like the $1 million lottery check I wanted to win when I was thinking I'm going to set out and do good and God's going to give it back to me. It was the experience for me of remembering, of like knowing in my gut that when we act from the place of how may I serve instead of what's in this for me, and we come from that energy, the universe gives us that energy back times 10. So I think that if you're questioning whether the signs or communications or messages from your loved ones, or just from God or from the universe or from your angels or from our dad, I would say open yourself up to that space within you of love, of service, of just asking, how may I serve, instead of where's my sign? What's in it for me? How am I going to get the message that I want? I need this advice. It's not coming. And I believe that if you shift that energy, you will get back everything you are looking for, answers and messages and communications and miracles, because that was a miracle for me.
It's beautiful, Serena. And let me just share from chat. Susan M is saying, I want you to know how much this program has uplifted me and inspired me to open to more love and connection. It's all happening at once. Thank you. And as you're sharing this, Serena and Sage, as you're just sharing what you are called to share, you're answering people's questions, whether you know it or not. Steve had a question. He says, oh, well, there's the answer to my question, even though it wasn't technically asked. So thank you. And continue to, don't worry, we're getting to all the questions, whether you know it or not. We have a fun one from Christina. Christina asks, what are Serena and Sage's favorite books by their father? And she understands this may be a hard question to ask or to answer.
I'll have to admit that I have not read all of them, but I mean, he was writing books before I was born. So I didn't take as big of an interest, honestly, until after he passed. And the first book I chose to read was his book, I Can See Clearly Now, which was a memoir that he wrote when he was about 73, 74. He started writing this book, and we all said to him, like his children, we all said, you know, why are you writing a memoir? You're only in your early 70s, you know, you're going to have to write a part 2 in 10 more years. And he said, I remember, because I was there when I asked him, he said, I don't know why I'm writing this book right now. In fact, he had just declared that he was done writing, actually, just a couple months before he began writing again. He said, I don't know why I'm writing this, but I have to write it. I'm being called to write it now. So I'm just following that calling that I've followed my whole life. And we all thought he was crazy for writing a memoir at that time, but he actually, you know, passed away about a year after that book came out. I had not read it yet. I had looked at it, and there were some parts that I was in, so I had read those parts, but I had not read the whole book. And when he passed away, I was so drawn to reading this book because, you know, my dad was 50 when I was born. So there's so much of his life that happened before I was even a thought. You know, maybe I was with him in another way, I don't know, but I just felt so drawn to learning about his past and the experiences that shaped him, especially the experiences in his 20s, because I was in my 20s. And I really, really loved that book. And it was the most readable for me. And I recommend it. It's, you know, it's more of a story. It's different than any other book he's ever written. But yeah, that would be my favorite right now.
That was going to be my answer, was also I Can See Clearly Now, because to me it was such a really personal and unique look at his life before I was in it, which I, you know, especially wanted to devour after he passed. But besides that one, I would say it would be a tie for me between The Power of Intention and There's a Spiritual Solution to Every Problem. Particularly recently, like in the last 7 years, since I've had so many difficult things come up in my life, and I've been challenged to find a spiritual solution to all that I experienced. And I cannot tell you the number of times I dipped into that book and would just open it randomly, and I would get the answer that I needed in that moment. And so I would say recently it would be Spiritual Solution.
Thank you.
You know, and interestingly enough, let me just add this. On the day of September 11th, 2001, on the day of the attack on our nation, and you know, in New York and in DC and in the field in Pennsylvania, on that day there was a full-page ad that his publisher had taken out in, I think it was the New York Times, it might have been the New York Post, but a full-page ad aired in that on that day for There's a Spiritual Solution to Every Problem. And I know my dad, they had never done that before, taking out a full page ad. And I know that it struck him as such an, you know, awful, but also meaningful coincidence or alignment that on the day of the worst violent attack on our nation, he had just put out a book about spiritual solutions to problems. If only our leadership had come from, you know, that place, how many times would we have avoided war and unnecessary violence and death?
Thank you, Serena and Sage. And Dee says, you girls are such a beautiful tribute to and example of your father's love and compassion.
Oh,
So thank you, Dee.
Thank you.
So let's see. So Christy is asking, and this is along the same lines. What is the best advice your dad gave you about living life, and or including now after he has passed? What is the greatest advice he has given you?
I always struggle with questions like this because
I can answer it.
Okay. I mean,
I didn't want to. Okay, go ahead. No, go ahead, because I had like a thought immediately that I knew that you would agree with. But go ahead. You go ahead.
I was just gonna say I can't say what my favorite is, but I'll say what popped into my mind first. And I think I shared this in the modules, but I'll just share it again because I think it's such an important lesson, at least for me. My dad used to talk about how when he would play tennis, he would have some days where he was so in the groove and where everything was going right for him. And, he'd hit the ball and it would stay in by a centimeter, and his partner would, hit the ball and it would hit the net and just not make it over. And everything was going right for him. And he was, just in this incredible space, like an energetic space where he just could not miss and won every point. And he said that when he was in that space, it just felt really good. You feel invincible, and you're just like, yeah, this is amazing. And you feel like you could do anything. And, but then he said, there are those times when your opponent gets into that space, where they don't miss a ball and where they, it's like, you think that's about to go out, so you don't even go for it, but it stays in by a centimeter and all of that. And he said that when your opponent is in that space, it feels really bad. It feels very frustrating. The whole time you're thinking like, oh, and you just start playing worse and worse because you can't get the ball to do what you want it to do. And he said that what he learned over his many years of playing tennis, he was an avid tennis player for probably 30 years, was that when his opponent got into one of those spaces, the best way for him to be able to shift his playing ability, which was really an energy, was to feel genuine joy for his opponent, to just bring that all through his body, to say it as a mantra. I am so happy for him that he is feeling so aligned right now and that he is playing the best tennis of his life. And he said that as he did that, for several minutes and time would go on, it would push him back into a space of playing incredible tennis. And then they would have some of these most fun matches that they ever had because they're both playing incredible tennis. And I try to remind myself of that whenever I'm feeling down, not necessarily in a competitive game, just in life, when you feel like something's hard or you're just not having a good day. If I can't find something to be happy about for myself, what can I be happy about for somebody else, even for a perfect stranger, something you see on the internet, anything, and just say a prayer of gratitude for that person. And when I do that, I slowly notice myself shift back into a space of receiving, back into a space of gratitude for the circumstances of my life. And I can see the pieces start falling back into place. So I just always loved that advice of like, it's not always going to be perfect for you, but there's still a place for joy for somebody else. And the irony is that it brings the joy back for you, and just creates more love and joy to go around the world. So, yeah.
That was better than what I was going to say. So I'm glad that you took that question.
Okay.
Yeah, then let's move on. Thank you, Sage. Let's see. Laura is asking, what can we do as individuals to increase our mindfulness of the universe and increase our ability to recognize the universe at work?
I think mindfulness is the key word there. Mindfulness is about being present in the moment now. And I think that you increase your mindfulness, your awareness of the universe by being in the present moment. And that means something that was always the case when we were kids, when we would get in the car with our mom or our dad. Neither one of them turned on the radio. Neither one of them immediately put the music on. It was a silence, just that, like, embracing that silence, embracing that not needing to constantly fill your mind with distractions or noise, but instead embracing just being present in the here and now. And for me, I can tell you for sure that there are times, because I drive a lot because I have 3 kids in school and after school activities and on. And for me, a lot of times when I'm in that place of feeling insecure, unsure, I will turn the radio off in the car and I will force myself, because it's work for me I'm a Gemini, real chatty. My mind's always going. Meditation does not come easily to me. It doesn't come easy for me. And I will force myself. And at first it will feel like, oh, I don't want to have to like be alone by myself with no distraction. But after a few minutes, I actually find myself just relaxing in my body and being present in the moment and kind of more choosing the thoughts that I'm now going to allow myself to marinate on, rather than turning on an audiobook or calling someone or turning on music, which for me is a tool of distraction to take me away from, having to sort of sit by myself in silence and just slow down and be present. And so for me, I think you increase your mindfulness when you practice, make it a real practice and an effort of just being present now.
Awesome. Thank you, Serena. Just a note for our viewers here. There are many technical questions about receiving signs, and I'm just holding off on these until Karen's mentoring sessions, because she will very comfortably answer those. So just hang tight with some of those questions. We have a question from Liz. Liz is saying, hello, your father talked a lot about ego. I was wondering if you could share your thoughts on ego, specifically some practical ways to deal with our own ego and other people's ego in terms of conflict and justice and so forth.
What I would say about the ego, this is just my opinion. A lot of our dad's earlier work focused on the ego. And then I think as he went on, he focused more on spirituality, less on like psychology-based principles. But I think the ego is very much real. I think we all know that. For me, I studied psychology as well in college, and I think that the best way to deal with your ego, I think it's very hard to rid yourself of an ego. I think very few people accomplish that in this life. You're talking like Christ-like consciousness, Jesus Christ, St. Francis, people of that nature. And that's not personally a goal of mine right now, but I do think you can make your ego work for you by taming it. Finding when you catch yourself in situations where you are sort of saying, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? Like Serena was talking about earlier, if you can switch that to, how may I serve? You're switching from an ego-based thought to a love-based thought. And your ego is always going to exist for 99.9% of us. But it's just catching it when it's not serving you. And when you're feeling feelings of jealousy or, none of those are not positive feelings, and they're not going to serve you or anyone else. So stopping yourself. Why am I having this feeling? What can I do about it? Can I create a mantra to repeat to myself that will help me shift this energy somewhere else? And I think, I'm raising little kids. I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and 3-year-olds have a really big ego, is what I'm discovering. Like, you're constantly stroking their ego basically, and it gets bruised very easily. But what you would learn from a psychologist is that that's an important part of development, and you need to boost their ego all the time, even when you don't feel like they deserve it. It helps them to do that. And it's true for us as adults too. We need those ego boosts, and that can serve you. That can be positive energy. What you don't want is your ego to take away from your joy and your ability to have joy for other people and just live from a loving based place instead of a fear based place. So it's making your ego work for you is what I would say.
Thank you, Sage. We have another kind of trivia question here. Sharon is asking, Sharon from Pleasantville, New Jersey is asking, just curious, why are most of your family's first names begin with S?
Because our mom loved the sound. And what?
She loved the softness of it, I was gonna say.
Yeah, she loved the softness of it. And so our oldest sister, Tracy, is our dad's daughter from a previous marriage. So she's not my mom's biological child. So my mom didn't name her because my mom didn't give birth to her, but my mom gave birth to the rest of us. And so our dad gave us the names Shane, Stephanie, Sky, Summer, Serena, Sands, and Sage.
And I'm getting we have a chat, Serena. If you remember, Safina is with us again. She says same thing with her family: Safina, Sophia, and Soraya. With
those are beautiful names, and we had a full thing about a Josephine, a Safine that was named after a Josephine or a Josephina. So I had a really cool experience just a few weeks ago with that name, because our sister Summer passed away in May, and I think this answers a question that I saw come up in the chat earlier. So I'm just going to go here because I think this answers a separate question somebody had. But Sage and I lost our sister Summer in May, and unexpectedly. And so the reason that this Safina or Safine name came up is because I hadn't really been getting any signs or messages from her. In fact, like it was something that, we had talked about, Sajan had talked about, because at that time she hadn't really had many either, or really any. I don't think any of us really had. But on the same day, I had this cool experience happen. Sage had a dream with Summer that she knew was also a real visitation. So somebody had asked before, when can you start communicating with somebody who passed? And I would say that I don't know for everybody, but I've had a lot of experiences with death now, and I think it varies. But I also think that my grief after losing Summer was really, really all-encompassing. And I don't think I was even in a place of receiving signs yet. I think I was still in like this place of enormous just pain. But after a few months, so just like 2 weeks ago, I met a little girl at the pool in our neighborhood, and she said that her name was Safine. And I said, "Oh, that's a pretty name." And she said, "I was named after my grandmother, Josephine." And I thought that was cool because my sister Summer, the only time she ever had a puppy that she raised into adult doghood, not a mature dog that she adopted from the pound, but one that she had from like a puppy, she had named her dog Josephine. And so it's not a name that you really hear very much. So I thought, well, that's kind of cool, Josephine, Safine. So then a minute later, her brother comes swimming over, and his name is Mason. And that's the name of my stepson that passed away. So here we've got Safine, Josephine, and Mason. And I said to my husband, wow, that's crazy. Her name is Josephine and her brother's name is Mason. And he knows about Summer having Joey, her dog. And then it was just a moment of like, that's kind of a cool coincidence. And then we left, and long story short, a lady came by walking her dog in front of our house when I was out there with my daughter, Sailor. And she was helping me with something on our golf cart. And then she briefly just said, because her dog was like pulling at the end of the leash, like trying to get to me for some reason. And I don't think most people would say like I'm a dog whisperer at all. So it's not like I had any understanding of why this dog wanted to get to me so much. But the lady was like, gosh, I've never seen her do this before. Like, stop. And I said like, oh, well, she can come over and like, I'll pet her. And she said, she wasn't adopted as a friendly dog. She's not considered friendly. She can be aggressive. And I was just like, normally at that, I'd be like, all right, peace out. Like, I don't want to get near your dog then. But for some reason I was like, it's okay. Like, I just let her come. And the dog came over and I squatted down. She sniffed me, licked my hand, and then slowly moved her way up to my face, sniffed my face, and then licked my face. And then she stopped and just put her head right here under my chin, just like that. So then I looked at her and I was petting her, and I thought like, wow, this dog has really soulful eyes. Like, this is incredible that this dog wants to be with me. And I said to the lady, what is your dog's name? And she said, her name is Summer. And so for me, having the Safine, the Josephine, the Mason, and then a dog that I wanted to be with me, that wanted to come to me, which is not usually the case. Like I said, I'm not a big dog whisperer. It was, to me, it was a sign. It was a moment of knowing that her energy was felt, as I believe to be the case, children and animals are much more sensitive to the energy of the spirit world, because they haven't had a lifetime of that link getting rusty. And for me, I had this just complete understanding that Summer's energy was influencing the dog to come to me, so that I would hear that the dog's name was Summer, and I would know that Summer was right there. And it was just a miracle to me. It was a really incredible experience to have just talked about her dog named Josephine, meet a kid named after a Josephine with a brother named Mason, and then a dog named Summer. So I guess my point is that, and Sage, actually, that was the same day that Sage then had the dream of the real visitation with Summer. So I think sometimes, for whatever reason, souls or spirit take the time that they need to get to that place of learning or remembering how to communicate with us now that they are without their physical form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I with our dad, it felt like it was immediate, that he was giving signs, and that I feel like we were all obviously beyond heartbroken when our dad passed away, but there was an ability to be joyful still, and we could laugh about stories about him like pretty much right away. With Summer, it didn't feel that way. I think because she was young, and there was just a lot of other feelings mixed into the grieving process. And so I think that's one part of it, is that, we weren't ready to receive these signs come from a place of joy, and we just weren't there yet. And I also think that possibly she had to figure it out more. How do I send signs? However, I have no idea how it works, but whatever she had to learn on how to do that, I think maybe it just took her longer. Her transition was different. If we go through a life review or something like that, her life review maybe was longer. So I think it's both. I think it's us and it's them. And I think the time will come, but it's sometimes not right away. I mean, I asked Summer to come to me in my dreams every night before I went to sleep from the day she passed away. And it took probably, I don't know, close to 3 months. It was that around the same, it was either the night before or that night that Serena had the experience with the dog named Summer, that I had a dream about Summer finally. And when she showed up, I was like, finally, I said that in the dream. And she said, I'm sorry, Gail, I'm figuring it out. We called each other Gail. But she said, I'm starting to figure it out. And then I think it was the next day Serena had this experience with the dog, and we were like, okay, maybe she really is starting to figure it out,
Yeah, about time.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you, Serena and Sage. That's a cool insight, that she's figuring it out after some time.
Yeah.
Makes you really, think about what's happening after leaving the body.
What is she figuring out? I don't quite know, but
Exactly. So much appreciation in the chat for you guys. So thank you. And just a note, Serena shared the Cliff Notes version of that story. So if you'd like to hear the full story, or at least a fuller story, check out the Fireside Chat. If you go into your course portal, look at the Fireside Chat, and Serena shares an extended version of the story where she meets Summer the dog. Let's see. So Vanessa is asking, does being in a higher vibration really translate to being super relaxed, almost in a sleep state?
I don't think so. I would say that a higher vibration, being in a higher vibration, is being in a place of, let's say the highest vibration would be divine love, would be like true, like Sage said before, Christ consciousness, God consciousness, where all of the answers that you seek, all of the abundance that you seek, the love, the health, the healing, the miracles, they're just there in the same moment that you think of them. Like Deepak Chopra used to always say, there's 3 ways to get strawberry ice cream. And the first way is to think, I'd like to get some strawberry ice cream. So then you get in your car, you drive, and sure enough, the store has some strawberry ice cream. So there you go. Take your energy a little higher. And when you're coming from a little bit of a higher place, meaning more connected to that God consciousness, you think, I'd like to have some strawberry ice cream. And when you have that thought, a moment later, somebody comes by and says, hey, we're selling strawberry ice cream. Would you like one? I'm selling them out of my cooler. And you think, wow, I was just thinking that. That's amazing. And you get all booga booga, thinking that that was like some crazy coincidence that just happened, but you're coming from a higher energy. The third way to get strawberry ice cream, which is the way of, Christ with the fish and loaves example in the Bible, or all religious traditions and teachings have examples of people that reached this level of consciousness. But it's, very few and far between. And the third way to get strawberry ice cream when you're at that level of consciousness is to think strawberry ice cream, and poof, strawberry ice cream is here. And that's the highest vibration, the highest frequency, where all things are happening here now, in an instant. And I believe that it doesn't have to be coming from a higher energy or a higher frequency. It doesn't have to be that you're sitting still, or that you're, meditating, or that you're slowed down. I think that you can have, I think that I've seen now women give birth, and I've given birth. And I think that in that moment of extreme everything, when you've just now looked in your baby's eyes for the first time, I think that that can be a moment of extreme God consciousness, of just that pure love of this miracle that you are now looking at and holding. And I believe that that a lot of women will know what I'm talking about, and that's not a moment of being quiet and still and just relaxing and sleeping. A lot of times that's a moment of like, it's heaven and hell at the same time. And I think that that energy is really much more to do with the thoughts that you fill your mind with, which become the energy that you live with, because it's the energy then that's in your body. And I think that when you come from a higher vibration, you are just in a place of choosing thoughts that are in alignment with God. And I don't think it has anything to do with where you're physically at, sitting, standing, relaxing, excited. I think that, enthusiasm, if you break down the word into the Greek that it came from, is entheosiasm, which translates to the God within. Enthusiasm, that feeling of just being excited and enthusiastic about something or someone or an idea, that's the God within you speaking. And I think that, I don't know about you guys, but for me, when I'm enthusiastic, I'm usually not kind of like in a meditating quiet state. I'm much more like, yes.
Yeah. I think it could be also, though, as a deep sense of peace could be a high vibration as well. Not necessarily sleepy, but just deep feelings of peace and wellness and wholeness and contentedness can be a very high vibration. I also think that like maybe what you're referring to is that state between consciousness and unconsciousness when you're drifting off to sleep. I don't think that's necessarily a high energy, like Serena was saying, but I do think that can be a space where our egos aren't in the way, where we, our egos tell us, I know everything, and my body can see and touch and smell and taste and if it's here, then I'd be able to experience it one of those ways, through our five senses. But our unconscious minds recognize that there's more to the world or to what's around us than what meets the eye, than what our five senses tell us are there. And as you drift off into sleep, your ego, gets a little quieter, it's possibly non-existent, and you're able to experience these dreams from your loved ones. And so I think there's a space of receptivity that happens when you're sleeping and you go into an unconscious state that's possibly much more difficult to achieve when you're in a conscious state and your ego's, over here telling you that it knows everything. And so, yeah, but I don't think that's necessarily translates to a higher energy or frequency. It's more of a unconscious versus consciousness.
Thank you. Thank you both, Sage and Serena. We have a question from Carol. Carol is saying, I'm very emotional. I'm brought to tears very easily, primarily having to do with beauty. It's part of who I am. Can either of you speak to this? Is this my energy level, or is this a problem of sorts?
I don't know if I necessarily understand, like, meaning relating to beauty, like personal appearance, or just things that are beautiful that take your breath away.
I think now that I've thought about it more, I think she probably means when there's a beautiful thing happening around her that she's often brought to tears. And I think that that's a wonderful thing. I mean, I'm the exact opposite of that. And sometimes, but I feel like I want to be brought to tears. I feel that sense. I feel those overwhelming emotions, but I'm not able to release it. And I think the fact that you are just shows that you are highly connected to those that are around you, to other people's energies. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
I do too.
Thank you. Thank you. We have, let's see who this is. This is Carol. Oh, maybe a different Carol here saying, any other or any practical tips on what one can do to receive, to raise frequency, to receive such messages or dreams from our loved one? And just to bring this in with other questions I've seen of the dreams, people asking how to bring about a loved ones in dreams. And I know, Sage, you've had at least 2 that have been shared within this course. So how are these? How do you continue to bring these forth?
Yeah, I just ask for them every night before I'm going to sleep. Last thing I do is ask for my dad and my sister to come to me in my dreams. They don't always listen. I don't know if I always remember my dreams, but one thing Karen taught us is to, when you're asking for them to come to you in your dreams, you have to also ask them to wake you up when the dream is ending, because then you will remember it. You always sort of are able to remember that last dream you had, or the one that happens right before you open your eyes. So, and the dream that I had with Summer was very much that way. It was, she came to me, and then I think my son started to wake up, so I woke up. So I got up out of bed and I fully remembered it, and I wrote things down. And I had a similar experience with my dad because my alarm went off and I fell back asleep because I hit snooze. And during that 10 minutes while I was snoozing, I had a really incredible dream with him. And then because my alarm went back off, I woke up and it was so fresh and it was so real. And I talk about that dream in the program, so I won't repeat it here. But yeah, I think it's asking for it and being patient and allowing them to come to you. And I think the first part of the question was something about energetic alignment. I think the biggest tool you have in your toolbox is meditation. Taking that time to invite silence into your mind and your consciousness, because it is that space between the notes where your loved ones can speak to you and communicate with you, and where you can feel your intuition, because our minds are going 100 miles per hour all day long. When you allow for that silence, that space, that's when you can get, I believe, and I have found, that's when you can become more connected to what's beyond your mind, because what's going on in your mind is so chatty and constant that it can be hard to differentiate. And so meditation has been proven to change people's brains. And they do brain scans of lifetime meditators, and they have a different brain anatomy than we do. So there's actual scientific evidence that it is changing your brain. And our mom has been a lifetime meditator, and she is extremely calm. She's also extremely intuitive. She has an incredible story, even with, our sister was her daughter that she lost. And she has a very unique perspective on that experience because of her spirituality, which she attributes to meditation. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Sage and Serena. There's, speaking of meditation, Jake is saying, I love your stories about your mom's meditation along with a do not disturb sign on her door. I've begun doing the same thing and it works. Thanks. So thank you, Jake.
Thank you.
And you kind of pointed to this, Sage, but Susan is asking, is it better to just let the signs come to you rather than looking and seeking for them and forcing them to come? And so I think really the question is, what is the balance between letting the signs come and setting our intention or desire to receive them?
Yeah, so I can just tell you this little anecdotal story. So a few years back, several years back, I mean, I think I was like 20 and I'm 37 now. So let's just say like, maybe I was 22, something like that. We were out on Maui with our dad, and I was there with my sister Sky and my brother Sands and my dad. And my dad was trying to demonstrate for us that that when we pay attention, when we are present in our lives and pay attention, to what the universe is like guiding us toward or shows up as, or what, instead of like, you know, listening to, there was a CD that my brother had at the time, and so maybe I was younger than 22 because there was still CDs, but whatever it was, he was basically trying to get us to understand that what you surround yourself with, good or bad, is going to become, it's going to become an energy field that maybe you don't necessarily want to be part of. So pay attention to what the universe is showing up for you as. And one of the ways he wanted to really demonstrate this was because, or one of the ways he wanted to show us this was by taking $100 bill, and he would tape it somewhere completely randomly in the condo. And whoever found it first got to keep it. So day 2 of him doing this, and I had just got $200 by just opening my eyes. I will tell you that for that week, there was not a single $100 bill that I didn't see, that I didn't immediately find. In fact, it got to a point where I started to feel so bad for Sky and Sam's that when I would walk in and I would just immediately see it, I would just nudge Sky, like, Sky, I think you want to go look out there in that room on the ceiling in the corner. And then she would. And anyway, and I remember at one point, my dad said, you know what, Serena, this was the worst game we could have ever played because you are fixated. You are now paying too much attention. And it's true. The moment I came into the condo, because he would tape it somewhere after we had left for a little while, it's all I would do. I would be scanning every spot. It was like I became so hyper focused and fixated on finding these $100 bills. And I remember him saying to me, you know, for some people, they need to be reminded to pay attention. But for other people, they need to be reminded to let go, to just be, to stop searching and asking and looking and analyzing. And he used to always say, you are always analyzing. And he would say, what's the first 4 letters of analyze? And I would say anal. And he would say, you're anal retentive, Serena. You are analyzing so much. And so for me, it was actually, I mean, it's just a silly, funny story, but I needed to be reminded to allow my mind to rest, to slow it down, to stop analyzing and thinking and looking. So when it comes to signs, I think that for some people, we have a tendency to look at everything, every license plate, and try to put it together and figure it out. And for other people, they could have the 5th sign in a row, smack them upside the head, and they would still think, well, that wasn't the sign that I was looking for, so it's not a real sign. So I think that some people, but my point is that I'm one that falls into the camp of always looking. And I've had to kind of realize or understand that the signs are coming at the time and when and where and how the signs are coming, that the loved one on the other side wants to get this message to me, they're going to get this message to me. I don't have to look so hard anymore. Now I actually trust, and I know that they will come. And I had one, our dad died 7 years ago, and August 30th is the anniversary. So that was just 2 days ago. And I went to get this vitamin treatment that my mom was like pushing for me to get. And when I was there getting it, the lady, it was like an IV of vitamins. It's like a B6 something, helps you with energy and whatever. And when I was getting that, the nurse that came over to do it, she had, so it's on the anniversary of my dad's death, and I'm thinking about him. And she comes over and she has a tattoo on her wrist that said, love you, comma, dad. And I looked at that and I said, that's really a beautiful tattoo. And she said, yeah, it was my dad's handwriting. He wrote that to me in a card. So I had his handwriting literally tattooed on my wrist. And I said, my dad died 7 years ago today, and I was hoping I would get a sign from him. And she said, this is your sign. So it was like, I didn't have to look so hard anymore. It actually just came right over to me on this woman's wrist saying, love you, dad. And maybe it wasn't a sign. Maybe it wasn't from him and it was just a coincidence. It doesn't matter to me anymore. I see it as I want to see it because I know and feel that he is still with me, guiding me, giving me advice, helping. And it's what I choose to believe, and therefore it's what I experience. But the choice is yours.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Serena. And as we close off this session together, thank you both so much. Sage, I'm wondering if you have any just closing or parting words for everybody here as they're set off to take the rest of this masterclass.
Yeah, I mean, just reading these comments, and thank you everyone for being here and for all this positivity coming our way and coming towards everybody. It's such a beautiful group, I can tell. Somebody said, why do we talk ourselves out of signs? And it's true. We can talk ourselves out of anything. And so the choice is yours. Take it from this day forward. Don't talk yourself out of miracles. Believe in them, allow them to come to you, be receptive. Don't be anal like Serena, where you're looking for them too much. Because I think in life there's a balance, and I'm just kidding with Serena, but I think there's a balance with everything, and you're striking a balance between a desire and going out and getting your desire, and then allowing your desire to come to you. And so put your desires out there, then allow them to come in the shape and the timing that they are meant for you.
Thank you, Sage, and thank you, Serena, for being with us. And thank you,
Yeah,
everybody.
thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks, Noah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. It's been quite a process, this whole thing. Boy, putting this together. But our time here is wrapping up. So everybody just keep an eye on your email inbox, and we'll be meeting with Karen shortly for those mentoring sessions. So thank you all. Love you all, and God bless.
Yeah, God bless everyone.